Now, this year has been nothing short of magical for the Houston Rockets. They have officially slammed the door on that rebuilding phase as they become just the second team in the Western Conference so far this year that's been granted with a guaranteed spot in the Western Conference playoffs. The Houston Rockets sitting at second place. They've been so good this year in this very brutal, this very competitive Western Conference. They have 51 wins and counting on the season. So these boys have been taking care of business all season long, and they're in a prime position. They're playing some prime basketball right before the NBA playoffs. Now, one thing I'm really having a problem with, and I guess I've grown attached to the Houston Rockets with all the videos I've made on these guys, but we're at that point in the season where we're hearing all those fun conversations. Who's going to win a championship? Who's going to make a deep playoff run? Who should teams be scared of going into the playoffs? And I'm not hearing the Houston Rockets come up positively in these conversations enough. And as a matter of fact, I'm hearing too much of the opposite. I'm hearing too much of why the Houston Rockets can't go deep into the NBA playoffs, and the reasons behind it. For me, from a pure basketball fan and just knowing the game of basketball, these reasons aren't making too much sense to me. I've been hearing three reasons. I've been hearing that the Houston Rockets are too young, not enough experience. I don't agree with that. I've been hearing that the Houston Rockets, because they can't shoot the three ball, that their offense is bad. I definitely do not agree with that. And then also the Houston Rockets, they haven't been able to beat the better teams in the NBA this season, which is very, very crazy. I think and I'll start with that. I think a lot of people get the Houston Rockets, they get their season misconstrued because they had that rough patch. They had that rough patch at one point in the season, but that's the thing. People got to start taking into context, and we got to start looking at circumstances, because the Houston Rockets, they've been at this they're in second place in the Western Conference right now. They've been top 3, top 4, or they've been top 3, top 4 all season long. They hung out at that 2 spot a lot all season long, and it wasn't until they had some injuries to some very key players to when they started to struggle against the top teams in the NBA. They had Jabari Smith Jr. go down, and people don't know how, if you're not a Houston Rockets fan, you don't know how impactful and how good Jabari Smith Jr. is. And then also, once again, Tari Eason, same thing. He's not a household name, so people don't know how truly good he is. And then also, Fred VanVleet missed some trivial time this season for the Houston Rockets. So those are 3 guys that when they're on the court and when they're on the lineup for the Houston Rockets, and then Fred VanVleet and Jabari Smith Jr. being 2 of their best floor spacers, I think it's normal for the Houston Rockets to struggle like they did when they were dealing with injuries. But when we look at this team, when they're fully healthy, when they have all of their guys in the lineup, they're a completely different animal, and they're very, very hard to beat. And we saw it in their most recent win against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, they were out Dillon Brooks this game because he was out because he received his 16th technical. And once you get your 16th technical, you get a 1-game suspension. So they were out Dillon Brooks, but they had all of their other key guys into the lineup, and they were able to go into a game. And we know the Oklahoma City Thunder, they have the number 1 seed locked up, but they are playing for something. They're trying to make NBA history, becoming the 3rd team ever to win 70 games, joining the 1996 Chicago Bulls and the 2016 Golden State Warriors. So the Oklahoma City Thunder, they're still treating games very seriously because they have that on their mind. Coming into this game, they were on an 11-game winning streak. So this wasn't no normal game. We got the playoffs right around the corner. Teams are trying to tune up for that. So this was a big-time game for both sides, and the Houston Rockets came out and got a wire-to-wire win against one of the best teams in all of the NBA, who had most of their best guys in the lineup. So that was a big time win for them. And then also, before we move on, the Houston Rockets, they showed another layer of versatility that they have, and that was starting both Alperen Sengun and Steven Adams. And I think this really threw the Oklahoma City Thunder off. It threw me off. I like to gamble a little bit. I had Alperen Sengun, I had his boards. I had no idea Steven Adams was going to be starting alongside him at the 5 spot. If I'm not mistaken, the Houston Rockets have never done that before, and it was Steven Adams who was getting all the rebounds for the Houston Rockets. But nonetheless, having Alp in there and also having Sengun in there and Steven Adams in there at the same time, it was very beneficial for both of those guys. Steven Adams had a night on the boards, 6 offensive rebounds. We look at Alperen Sengun, 31 points, on the 31 points on the night. And that was another thing. Another reason why I'm so big on the Houston Rockets, because I think they're so young, but all of these guys, their upside is on another level, and especially their best two players on the team, Alperen Sengun and Jalen Green. Their upside is on another level, and there's no telling when those guys are just going to flip that switch and take the next step and elevate their games. And I think they're at a point of their careers where it could take one game where they see what they can do, or it just take one game to get that confidence and they raise their game to an even another level. But for both of these guys to have a big-time scoring outing against the number one defense in the NBA, Jalen Green with 34 points, Alperen Sengun with 31 points, I think that is big time for the Houston Rockets. And if they can find a way to get scoring outputs from both of those guys consistently, they're gonna be so hard to beat in any basketball situation. So for the people saying that the Houston Rockets don't beat the better teams in the Western Conference and the Eastern Conference, you have to go back to the beginning of the season, because they've been in this position all season long, and they just had a rough spot when some of their key impactful players got injured. So that's that. We move on to the next thing. We move on to the experience, the too young. I don't really like that. I don't like when people say that about the Oklahoma City Thunder, because that just doesn't. And I'm not saying that experience doesn't matter. It definitely does matter, but I don't think it matters to the point where you could say, okay, this team is younger than that team, or this team has this many more playoff series than that team, that the team with the less experience just does not have a chance. I don't think experience is that important. I think when it comes down to basketball, your personnel, your execution, your coaching, and then just the better team is gonna win the series. That's just always how it is. The better team wins, and we don't see the better team lose unless something like catastrophic happens. But nonetheless, we look at the Houston Rockets. We look up at the makeup of this team. They have players who have been on this playoff journey before. We look at Fred VanVleet. Last time I checked, he won an NBA championship with the Houston Rockets. With the Toronto Raptors in 2019, and prior to that, he's been in previous playoff. And prior to that, he's been into plenty of playoff series. Same thing with Dillon Brooks. He's seen the playoffs a number of times, and then they have a head coach who got all the way to the NBA Finals, and he did come up short. But in his first year as a head coach, he got all the way to the NBA Finals. So they have guys on the team that know what they're doing. They have Jeff Green, who's been in the playoffs a bunch of times as a locker room presence. They have Steven Adams, who's been in the playoffs a bunch of times. So this notion that they're just like a young bunch of guppies out there is so crazy, and it's so lazy of a basketball take to, put a team down. So I don't think they're too young. I think they got enough guys on this team that's seen the playoffs before, that know what they're doing. They have a very a head coach that they respect a lot, that seems like he knows how to lead a group of men wherever he goes. So if you have that, I think you're gonna be just fine in the playoffs. And then lastly, and certainly not least, this three-point shooting thing. And I know shooting threes is important, but I think shooting threes is important when you have guys that can shoot threes. And then we see teams not knocking down the three-point shot at a high clip, or they're not knocking it down at a high rate. It's just like all of the rest of the offensive side of the game, it just goes out of the window. And I just think that's so crazy, man, because basketball is such a beautiful sport, and why we love it is because of some of the amazing things that we see on the offensive side of the ball, and it goes way past just knocking down three-point shots. But we look at the Houston Rockets as an offensive team. They are towards the bottom of the NBA in three-point shooting. There's no denying that, but they're not a bad offensive team. They're 15th in the NBA in points scored per game, and then they're 11th in the NBA in offensive rating. So they're borderline having a top 10 offensively rated team and a top 10 defensively rated team. They're like top 2, top 3. They go back and forth between that 2 and 3 spot every day, but they're a top 3 team on the defensive side of the ball when it comes to defensive rating. So this notion that they can't shoot threes just means that they're not going to be able to put the ball in the hoop. That's crazy. And they're in a situation to where their defense is like their best offensive weapon, because when they're getting stops, they're able to get out into transition. And when they get out into transition on the fast break, that's when they become very dangerous, because this team is just filled with athletes that can pass the basketball. And when we look at Jalen Green, not many players that can get up and down faster than him. Amen Thompson, Jabari Smith Jr., Tari Eason, all of these guys can get out in transition and run the floors. So I think the Houston Rockets and my last point of why like they're actually like a legit playoff team. When I look at the teams, Eastern and Western Conference, and we look at their rosters on paper, there's not many teams in the NBA that's deeper, in my opinion, than the Houston Rockets, or that can match their depth. I think from like top to bottom, the Houston Rockets are one of the best teams in all of the NBA. I think they're when it comes to their depth and quality players on the team, they're in that conversation with the Oklahoma City Thunder. They're in that conversation with the Boston Celtics because they have so many guys on their team, on their roster, that can impact the game and win a ball game for them. So I'm super big on the Houston Rockets. I'm very excited for the playoffs. I'm very excited for the rest of this season. They have another big time game against the Golden State Warriors tomorrow on the road. Definitely going to be tuning in to that one, and I can't wait to see how the Houston Rockets respond to another big time game. But that's what I wanted to talk about with you guys today. If you enjoyed, please leave a like, comment down below if you agree or disagree, and then subscribe for more weekly content. We do this all the time, man, and that's curtains.